is judged to be guilty of treason against his or her sovereign or country. All of us will remember the devastatingly sad images of Her late Majesty the Queen, sat, racked and crouched in fragile grief, needlessly muzzled and so alone on the pews of St George's Chapel, Windsor, without so much as a hand to comfort her following the loss of her lifelong love. She did this, as with everything else, with utter and stoic dignity, to remind the people that she was one of us, that these rules, so deviously composed and then imposed on her people, also applied to her. All the while, as she sat, head down in lonely despair, traitors stalked the halls of Westminster or toasted each other in carefree zest at secret speakeasies in Downing Street. Those images of Her Majesty are etched onto so many minds because they were a stark reflection of our own experiences during those dark times, a reflection of the unimaginable cruelty meted out on the population as the most sacred of liberties, rituals, and traditions were torn up in front of our horrified faces by scheming and bantering men in WhatsApp groups, vaingloriously drunk on power. The countless stories of those left to die alone in hospitals and care homes, of vulnerable children's education taken and sanity shaken, and of the silent and unheard fists and blows delivered to terrified spouses in lockdown houses. All the time, the bantering traitors in WhatsApp groups giggled over when to release the Kent variant of the virus. My own rage at this is crystallised by my dear mum's frail friends saying that they still can't grieve properly as they never had a chance to say goodbye properly. My siblings and I in that cold graveyard stood metres apart, unable to reach out a hand to our own father, himself stoic, head bowed and alone as they hurriedly lowered my mum into the ground, because those were Hancock's rules. Meanwhile, across town, glasses clinked in Downing Street. I imagine the former Health Secretary and the clapping cowards who applauded alongside in Parliament, lest the tireless campaigner for disability and mental health bribe them with the removal of their disability and mental health grants for voting against his tyranny, thought he was in the clear. Readying himself for the next chapter in his blessed life with £400,000 fees on celebrity TV and promises of altruistic charitable donations, which unsurprisingly turned out to be pocket change percentages of his takings in the end. He kept most of the dough, eager perhaps to squeeze that bottom again, this time on a moonlit beach in front of a boutique hotel somewhere warm and expensive, having betrayed his own wife, his own rules, his queen, and his country. Like some weak-chinned and sadistic dictator, he willfully and joyfully gleed at the abuses of his people. He declared himself and his follow-the-fear tactics sovereign over us all. He controlled us with confected variants to scare us into submission, confusing and destroying our ability to inform our own consent, all to quench his thirst for power. He vastly over-egged the severity of the possibly lab-cooked bug, to the point that his own chief medical officer was reluctant to endorse the hastily assembled alchemy of mRNA witchcraft for a virus of this severity. He demanded that we cover our faces in betrayal of the science he was so brutal to ensure everyone else followed, but not him. A jab, which, whether the regime will admit it or not, has killed and will continue to kill the dutifully innocent for years to come. As for Hancock, as Shakespeare said, now does he feel his title hang loose about him, like a giant's robe upon a dwarfish thief. I am not a supporter of the death penalty, however heinous the wrong committed, but after witnessing the crimes against humanity those in high office have partaken in these last years, my stance on the matter is now under close review. Well, it's all been fun and games at GB News HQ today as the back and forth between the production team, myself and the lawyers over what I can and can't say about the delightful Matthew has gathered pace. We've come to an agreement and the lawyers, for my own good, would like me to remind you that Matthew has not committed treason or any other crimes except breaking all the rules he made up. Welcome to the home of free speech, which definitely doesn't only work in one direction. I'm going to read lovely Matthew's statement now. These stolen messages have been doctored to create a false story that Matt rejected clinical advice on care home testing. This is flat wrong. These messages imply Matt simply overruled clinical advice. That is categorically untrue. He went as far as possible, as fast as possible, to expand testing and save lives. This story categorically shows that the right place for this analysis of what happened in the pandemic is in the inquiry. Now, I've been wondering today about whether our treason laws should be significantly expanded to punish politicians who commit crimes. Seeing as these laws have been in place for almost 700 years, I think it might be time they're due an upgrade. In fact, the last person to be convicted of high treason under the 1351 Treason Act was William Joyce, aka Lord Haw Haw, who was found to have collaborated with the Nazis during World War II and hanged, yippee, for his crimes. Recently, the government has been planning on updating the treason law to be modernised and give more powers to target threats to the UK domestically and overseas. Yet there are concerns that it could actually do more harm than good. So, well, to talk with me about this, I'm joined by historian Martin Whittock. Good evening, Martin.
Good evening.
700 years is quite a long time. What changes could or should be added to treason law?
Well, you're absolutely right. The treason law that we now have dates back to, it's been amended since, the Treason Act of 1351. That was under Edward III. And originally the aim was to stop people plotting the death of the sovereign or adultery with the sovereign's consort, with the sovereign's eldest unmarried daughter, or with the wife of the heir to the throne, waging war against the sovereign, assisting the sovereign's enemies, attempting to undermine the lawful established line of succession. And it could be very, very severely punished. Members of my own family in 1685 in Somerset were hanged, drawn and quartered for treason. If you were lucky, you were dead before they pulled your insides out and set fire to it. If you were unlucky, you weren't, if you see what I mean. In the end, it developed to mean not just threatening the life of the sovereign, it came to mean threatening the sovereign's state. And then it all started to get very, very woolly because it could be misused. Parliament could find somebody guilty of treason and you couldn't appeal. Favourites of the rulers could be dragged before the courts when powerful rivals controlled Parliament. Or it could hit people never intended. The execution of Charles I in 1649, or too broad. It could include counterfeiting coins, or saying that the king is not the sovereign of the supreme head of the Church of England. It could even be stretched to include a Welshman stealing cattle, or to commit murder by poison. So over the years, treason has become increasingly difficult to apply. People talk about traitors, they talk about treason, but the simple matter is that treason has a very, very specific legal application. And in fact, since the 19th century, it has proved increasingly difficult to get convictions for treason because it is so complicated. So, for example, as you've rightly said, the last person who was committed for high treason was William Joyce, Lord Haw Haw, in the Second World War, executed by hanging in 1946. And many people will be surprised to know that the death penalty actually technically remained for treason until it was completely abolished in 1998. Extraordinary, even though it had been abolished across the UK, apart from Northern Ireland, in 1969. It's sometimes still brought out. For example, Jaswant Chale was charged under the Treason Act 1842, one of the many revisions of the 1352 Act, and I believe convicted as recently as February 2023.
Would that be technically? Was that of treason or of high treason?
Act, it's not treason as normally understood. Treason is really difficult to make work.
So in regards to the fact that you've very beautifully laid out there the history of treason and the complexity of it, there will be many people in this country, certainly in regards to things like the murder of Lee Rigby or the Manchester bombings. Obviously, in that case, it's different. The bomber died with the victims. But people will want these things updated. Do you think that's possible and useful? To create a crime against the country?
Treason still exists as a crime, and some parts of it are very clear-cut in law, attempting to assassinate the monarch, for example. Other areas, betrayal of country, become much more difficult. So I'm not against the existence of the treason laws. I'm not against revising them. But the problem is treason is very difficult to prove because it's a very, very specific crime. And strong argument that we have laws, for example, against terrorism, against espionage, and we have contraventions of the Official Secrets Act, for example. And there's a strong argument, and I'm favourable, that these actually much active, much more time, and that probably treason is best kept tightly focused for protection of the monarch and possibly overthrowing the state. But overthrowing the state in law is a very, very complicated issue as well. My feeling is that treason is probably best kept as being something very, very specific, and we're better to be using these other laws that are on the statute book. And believe me, those other laws are there, and that's why the government rarely tries people for treason.
Martin, that is fascinating, and thank you for a short but really important history lesson in treason. Thank you so much, Martin, for joining me. That was Martin Whittock, historian. Right. Where are we? We're going, coming up. Oh, yes, coming up. It's International Women's Day. And perhaps you'll agree with me that it needs to be recognised more than ever nowadays. Back in 3.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Happy International Women's Day. I'm amazed that that's still a thing. Perhaps next year it should be renamed International Adult Human Female Day in the interest of linguistic probity. I was going to make some bad jokes about what a year it's been for women in the pool, on the cycling track, and in weightlifting. But then the girls in the team asked me why I would choose this day, of all days, to mock a bunch of blokes who couldn't beat other blokes in competition, so they decided to pop on a swimming cap and a women's swimming costume and rob actual women of a chance to take the top spot on the podium. So much as I'm not a fan of International Anything Days or woke holy months, I think women should be honoured and celebrated, especially when their private spaces are being invaded and removed and their very existence is being deleted from so many areas of public life, from the health service and birthing people to the aforementioned sports debacle. Women need our protection. The only people under greater attack are pale, straight males. So here's to International Women's Day 2023, and looking forward to the inaugural International Straight White Male Day 2024. Let me know what you think. Is there still a need for International Women's Day? You can email me at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at Loz of Fox. With me to discuss this is Dragon's Den entrepreneur Rachel Watkin and journalist and broadcaster Peter Lloyd. Peter, you're obviously celebrating all day today?
Oh, I'm exhausted. I've been partying all day.
How did you mark this momentous day?
Well, doing nothing. No, I mean, I have to say, I'm not a fan of International Day for anything or anyone, but especially not for this. As far as I can tell, it's just an opportunity for people to politically masturbate in public. It's like, I like women as much as the next guy, but seriously, ladies, get a room. We don't need to see this all the time. And besides...
I now have to apologise for your language.
Oh, please, give me a break.
7 o'clock. I usually have to apologise for my own language. Rachel, can you please just shut him up and
no,
tell him what...
Just let me say, it's not even about women, right? It's certainly not about the girls in Rotherham who were raped by Pakistani grooming gangs. What this is really about, you have to remember that International Women's Day was started by the Socialist Party of America in 1909 and is now just used to propagate feminist propaganda and trash men.
But hang on a minute. Let me, before I come to you, Rachel, women are under absolute direct threat from the whole trans madness. But anyway, Rachel, what do you think about International Women's Day and your...
I think you're misunderstanding it. But never mind.
Go on then, explain it to me, Rachel.
And for a start, it's International Men's Day on the 19th of November. So, feel free to
Unfortunately,
celebrate.
That's routinely ignored by feminists and derided.
It's not about
and it's certainly not picked up by the mainstream media.
Stop bickering, you two. Why do you like International Women's Day?
It's not about being a feminist. I would never class myself as a feminist. It is about equity and rightness and fairness.
Don't say the equity word. Equality? Or equity?
No. Equity as in fair.
Communism.
Because...
I told you.
No, how is it right? I had a conversation with a woman today, a fantastic woman. She is a CEO of a seriously large tech company. Her husband is also the CEO of a very large tech company. She was the first woman to float a multi-billion-pound company, and yet throughout her career she has earned 20% less than her husband. Now, how is that fair?
Well, is there an argument to say that men are more bullish in the contract negotiations and also that women take more time off to have babies? Is there that?
Did she take time off to have children?
She took time off to have one...
there you go!
No, because it was the same before she even had children, before the whole child arrived.
Women are more agreeable on the scales of the Jordan Peterson thing of agreeability and stuff like that. So, it's shown that women are more likely to take a lower offer. And men are more disagreeable, so you offer a man and he's not going to take it.
Yes.
So, and combined with the baby thing, the fact that you've got to take a period of your life out to, raise some children, wouldn't that account for a 20% pay loss?
Not really, no, because if women didn't have babies, we would have a very serious problem with the population. Men and women have to share that responsibility. So why should a woman be penalised? And as we progress, hopefully, in society, men should be able to have time off to celebrate the child as well.
Well, they do. I take a lot of time off to celebrate my children.
Yeah. But if you got a 20% pay cut for it...
I did. I took more than that, trust me.
Rachel, if the woman you cite is the CEO of a company and she's getting paid 20% less by her own company, then she's a moron and she shouldn't be the CEO of her own company. But as you talk about fathers enjoying time with their children, I think it's a bit galling, really, that feminists say, oh, men should spend more time raising their children at home. Do you know what? If men had equal parenting rights, maybe they would.
I didn't say they should.
That's not a bad point. You know, the thing about...
Damn, I'm good at this
stuff. No, because... Do you know, there is, like, only 1 in 3 entrepreneurs is a woman. If women were running businesses the same as men, it would add £250 billion to the UK economy.
Oh, come on, you can't just make up numbers like that.
No, it's from the Rose Report. So in which case, men would benefit as well because there would be money coming in from both parents,
Rachel,
allowing men to have more freedom with the children and less pressure.
The World Economic Forum showed that women are 50% of all startups for 2021.
Not in the UK.
Women are already
not in the UK.
Equal partners when it comes to starting businesses.
Not in the UK.
Do you think it's a noble job for a woman to be a mother and nothing else?
It's about choice.
Yeah.
It's about choice.
I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree with that.
In 2023, a lot of the young women that I meet, they sort of have this sense that to be a mother is in some way disgusting.
Absolutely not.
So do you think that we should, whilst on this journey towards equity, we should be going, all women are equal, mothers and CEOs?
Absolutely. If women want to stay at home and look after their children, that is their choice. But they should be able to have that choice and not be disrespected for it.
They do have that choice.
A lot of the time they don't have the financial
They do have that choice.
No, they don't.
Sorry, what do you mean by they don't have the financial choice?
Because, you know, especially single mothers, you know, if they don't have a partner that's helping to fund, it becomes really difficult, especially with the UK childcare situation, to be able to stay at home, you know, and be able to support the children.
Right, OK, just three quick things there. If a man isn't providing this, the Child Support Agency, which has been in place since the 70s, that's very effective. The second point is that you were saying that women are penalised for taking time off. That's just not true. If women choose to have a child, no one's forcing them to have a child.
No, they don't choose to have a child. Both couples choose to have a child. It's not the woman on her own.
Okay, well,
you know, it needs a man as well.
Fine, but my third point is most single mothers are not struggling. That's why there are so many of them. The state is largely bankrolled by men, and yet it's women who take out the most money from the public purse.
But it wouldn't be...
Women may have swapped husbands, but only for the public purse.
It would not be bankrolled if women had the same opportunities to earn the money.
They don't
have the same opportunities.
Is there anything in law which says that women don't have the same opportunities? Is there any... I mean, is there any legislation that says, by the way, women, you've got to earn 20% less than men?
No, absolutely not.
Right.
It's society, especially the UK society, and men within that society. And, you know, perhaps International Women's Day, a good stance on it would be to ask men, you know, if you don't think it's fair, please raise it within your companies to make sure that women...
I was having a Twitter discussion with somebody before, a feminist, and she lambasted me for getting involved in International Women's Day. Apparently that's a safe space that men aren't invited, so there's a bit of inconsistency there. But, you know, Rachel...
I don't agree with that.
You are hugely successful. You run a multi-million-pound business. You are living proof that women can
You're
thrive
not paid 20% less than the person.
You're hugely successful.
I'm not paid 20% less, but, you know, I've had...
You won International Women's Day.
It's wonderful, congratulations.
But is there a significance? OK, look, let's try and steel-man each other's arguments here. Give me a good reason for International Women's Day. Go on, the best reason you can come up with.
You can do it, come on now.
It produces some really funny memes.
Come on, come on, Peter. You know, we're living in a world where trans men are taking... Give us your best argument.
I haven't seen it yet, but a good reason for International Women's Day would be if it raised the profiles and addressed the issues affected by working-class girls, specifically those who are affected by grooming gangs in this country.
There you go. That's a good. Would you agree with that?
At the moment,
would
it doesn't
you say
do.
that was something that was important and relevant to International Women's Day this year?
I would say absolutely.
There we are. We're finding commonality. Go.
Do you know 1 in 3 women in the world have experienced sexual or physical abuse by their partners? You know.
Yeah, but also men also get punched in the face by women.
They do.
Just to say,
and
men
do you know
do,
what?
and men don't talk about it either.
They don't.
So it's a great undiscussed thing. Is there? Okay, look, as we sort of bring it to a close, is there any need for any international anything days and months and weeks and years? Because doesn't it give us a reason to have this disagreement where we could just say we honour, respect and protect and love women every day?
Do you know what? I would love to not need an International Women's Day or an International Men's Day.
No one needs one.
Okay.
I need water. I don't need an International Women's Day.
To help raise awareness, something is needed. That women deserve to have the same treatment as men.
But it's impossible to have the same treatment as men because we're totally different sexes.
We're not asking for equality. As somebody...
You want equity, that's spooky. It is a bit spooky.
As a woman said to me today, we don't want to use urinals, you know, we're not asking for the same.
Some of the blokes do, though.
Yeah, but what we're asking for...
Would you give them equity?
It depends on the man. I'm kidding. It's just about fairness. You know, if you have a daughter and your daughter isn't allowed to play football in school, even though the Lionesses have, you know, raised the profile massively, is that fair?
I can't believe you're worried about football in school when boys are the worst performing group in schools across the country.
Oh,
and
do you know
universities
why?
are like men deserts.
Do you know why? Have you done any research as to why?
Go on, woman-splain it to me, Rachel.
I'll
come on, let's be nice.
So, according to a BBC survey, the reason that boys are performing worse in A-levels to go to university is because they don't feel the same need for education, and therefore they do an hour's less study. Was it a day or a week? I can't remember. But they do less study than women because they don't need it.
But there is an absolute argument as well, being a parent of younger boys, that school is just not designed for boys on any level. It's very much built around the female experience, and because girls are so much more conscientious than boys. Boys are just wreckheads. They're running around bumping into each other.
But they don't go to university, but they still end up earning more money overall than women.
We have to wrap up, but I think we make very reasonable
I'm pretty
points.
sure you're earning plenty of money, Rachel.
I'm not complaining. I've been very lucky.
Happy International Women's Day. I'm going to send you my PayPal. Anyway, I would like to thank Rachel Watkin and Peter Lloyd. Coming up after the break, I will be joined by journalist Angela Epstein to discuss my What the Fox of the week. You won't want to miss this. I will see you in 3.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts
Moss?
of women. Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello again. I asked you earlier in the show, is there any point in International Women's Day? And Marion says, why not? Ian from Twitter has said, no. Why do we need a specific day for anything aside from religious celebrations? Dickie says, when women are being attacked and their safe spaces are being threatened, then absolutely yes. Which I kind of agree with. You know, we are obliterating women from real life and, you know, no one seems to be standing up for them. So, yeah, I'm kind of on that. I'm going a bit woke. It's worrying. Michelle from Twitter. Absolutely, there are still many disenfranchised women who need recognition. Another Twitter user says, there's no need for Women's Day or any other fatuous label day. That was me, but it's not anymore. Anyway, the cheesy Cheshire Cat, Chris Badman's got himself into hot water again for his clumsy comments, and this time even the Beeb appeared to be slightly perturbed. Old Jug Ears, aka Gary Lineker, tweeted about the government's new asylum plan, saying, there is no huge influx. We take far fewer refugees than other major European countries. This is just an immeasurably cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people in language that is not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 1930s. And I'm out of order, ? The BBC says Lineker's being spoken to about it, his impartiality responsibilities, otherwise known as patted on the back by everyone at the BBC. While the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, says she's disappointed by the comments. Joining me to discuss this is journalist Angela Epstein. Angela, what do you think of Gary Lineker's comments?
I think they were crass, they were completely inappropriate and have no real understanding of what 1930s Nazi Germany was all about. I think we can all agree that the crisis surrounding illegal migration is something that needs to be sorted, not least because innocent people every day are losing their lives and are being, ruthlessly exploited by all the gangs that are sorting out the crossings on these small boats. But setting that aside, Nazi Germany, this was a state which committed industrialized murder, government-sponsored industrialized murder, where women, babies, children, men, all ages, former war heroes that had fought for Germany, people right across Europe were rounded up, deported, and thrown into gas chambers, predominantly because they were Jewish. 6 million Jews were murdered, but also there were people who were murdered because of their political persuasion. Gypsies, people were murdered for their sexuality. This is an entirely different conversation. And what Lineker's done is, apart from showing his appalling lack of knowledge about human history, he's demonstrated that this is just the master of the soundbite. And in the process, what he does is he devalues the conversation surrounding immigration, because everybody's been up in arms about his choice of words and whether he should have said anything. And he also hugely devalues and insults those whose families, and who we still have survivors of the Holocaust, who went through those terrible periods and are somehow being used, sort of kicked around as a kind of a neat sort of armchair criticism. And it is just entirely inappropriate.
What do you think motivates people like Gary Lineker to annoy the hell out of everybody else with his pathetic virtue signalling. I mean, much as I defend his right to do it, what's he trying to achieve?
Well, I think possibly, I'm not Gary Lineker, as you can see, but...
Are you sure? It is International Women's Day.
Well, we've never been seen in the same room at the same time, so I couldn't possibly comment. But the point is that he is somebody who has a huge platform because he has a massive following. He was a world-class footballer. He stewards Match of the Day, which has millions of viewers. He's got a massive following on social media. But a lot of those things are energised and given horsepower by the fact that he's on the BBC's payroll. Now, because he's on the BBC payroll, he's obliged to subscribe to the values of so-called lack of bias that the corporation maintains it adopts. And you can't have it both ways. You know, you can't say that I've got the right to free speech. We've got the right to free speech because we're not funded by the state broadcaster. He is, and therefore he has to think about what he's doing. And I think sometimes I think there are 2 points here. First of all, maybe he thinks he's invincible, that he's so valuable he can get away with doing it. And he's also just not thinking about anything other than the fact that I'm Gary Lineker and I can say what I like. I'm not denying that he feels it about the immigration crisis and the illegal immigrants and the plight of those who are caught up in this. I'm sure he's absolutely sincere in that. But I think, you know, he has to step away from either his BBC fat wage packet or he has to step away from the debate.
Yeah, I mean, that's that covered. I mean, I admire and celebrate his right to free speech and the keyboard warriordom that he does. But is it now time, seeing as people can go to prison for not paying the TV licence, is it not time to get Gary Lineker and boot him out of the BBC, who are laughably partial about these matters?
Well, I think if it is clear that he's broken the laws of impartiality, and this is not the first time that he's done it, then serious conversations and a rap over the knuckles is not really enough. I mean, for him to kind of conflate the crisis surrounding the illegal immigrants and the 1930s Germany, which is, of course, the prologue to the Holocaust, is giving fantastic fuel to all those who would downplay the impact of the Holocaust. And I'm not overstating the case here. This was the blackest moment in human history, something from which we all have so much to learn, because it shows how hatred and evil, when not challenged or enforced by the state, can have devastating consequences. It's not something to be moved around as part of a kind of chess game in sound bites on social media. So I think where Lineker is concerned, really, I think he's overstepped the mark this time. He has been told before, he's done it before, and I think the BBC now have to either say one strike and you're out. I don't know if they're going to slay the golden goose, or they're going to say this is your on a final warning. And
I would imagine it will be I imagine it'll be neither, and Gary will be left to virtue signal to the end of time. Angela Epstein, thank you. The BBC have issued a statement. The BBC has a social media guidance, which is published. Individuals who work for us are aware of their responsibilities relating to social media. We have appropriate internal processes in place if required. I love reading these statements. BBC, impartiality. Anyway, defund them. After the break, I will be talking to pharmacist and reality star Navid Sole. Grab a drink and see you in 3.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News. Now for the best part of the show, where I talk to some of the biggest names in showbiz and politics, and I'm joined this evening by Nicki Minaj, superfan and reality star. Sorry, I thought I was about to say I was joined by Nicki Minaj, and I was like, oh, well, this is going to be a surprise. And reality star Navid Sole, who made his TV debut on The Apprentice in 2022, where he was hoping to get that 250 grand investment from Lord Sugar. The pharmacist and reality star joins me now to the studio. Navid, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Chin chin.
Cheers.
Hey.
Thank you. We're still water.
Now, still water. Go for a G&T. Still water too. Now, Navid,
Yes.
Are you familiar with the American podcaster Stephen Crowder?
I have no clue, to be honest, Lawrence.
So he has this thing called Change My Mind.
Okay.
Right. And you have said that you're bisexual.
Yes.
I am saying there is no such thing as bisexual. Bisexual, change my mind.
Bisexual, change your mind? I mean...
Bisexuality doesn't exist. Change my mind.
Oh, but you know what? Well, you know what? It's good to have a bit of 50-50 in it. Have a bit of.
Is it or is it greedy?
You know what? You have to experiment in life, Lawrence. I mean, we just live once.
Don't worry, Baba.
We live once, and it's like, you know, why not just try? You know,
give it all.
Yeah, give it all. Exactly.
Give it all a go.
Exactly.
Well, good for you. But you haven't changed my mind. So pharmacy.
Yes, exactly.
Talk to me. So you're saying that we need to increase and raise the awareness of pharmacies, now important they are in the community. Talk to me.
Yes, exactly, Lawrence. So obviously,
talk to me.
Yes, talk to me. So with my social media platform, I'm trying to kind of make more of an awareness in terms of what the role of a pharmacist is, what pharmacies do, and really kind of like...
What do they do?
I mean, firstly,
If you're sick...
Yes.
If you're feeling rubbish...
Right, yeah.
OK, so you got beginnings of a bug which you don't like.
Fine, yeah.
Pharmacy or doctor?
Pharmacy. Of
First
course,
up.
my darling. Pharmacy.
I would love it if you were my pharmacist.
You know what it is, Lawrence, as well, is that what people are not aware of is that I'm also like a prescriber, so pharmacists...
Can you prescribe? What can you prescribe? Should we talk after the show?
Well, depending, obviously, on what it is, but...
If it's just got am on the end of it, I'm happy.
It's more basically within my clinical competence, but... It's more like if they need antibiotics or blood pressure.
Can you prescribe antibiotics?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I'm qualified to do that. I'm a prescriber, and that's what
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's what it is that people are not aware of, and it's just always what's really frustrating, Lawrence, is that people say, I need to go to my doctors. I'm like, no, my darling, you need to come to me. I can examine you, diagnose you, and give you the appropriate treatment, my darling. Don't waste the GP's time.
Can you do that?
Yeah, of course.
So, hang on. So if I feel like, you know when you get like a strep throat or something,
yes.
that really like,
yes.
feeling. And, you know, in my mother's case, she just turned around and goes, I think it's viral, darling, there's nothing you can do about it. But if it was a severe bacterial infection, I could come to you and you give me one of those new antibiotic jobs in the big, what's it called, that one in the big packet?
What you mean the...
It begins with A.
Amoxicillin, the amoxicillin,
so you could...
Exactly, so, but obviously I'll be asking...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the thing, but the thing is, I'll be asking a lot of questions, though, in the sense of
what questions?
What the colour.
I'm not telling you about my background. What do you want to know?
No, like in the sense.
I wasn't there. I didn't touch the guy.
No, like in the sense of what colour your sputum is. For example, if it's green, it could be a sign of bacterial infection. But also have to just make sure I do some physical checks, checking your blood pressure. So I have to do the full check. So basically, what a doctor does, really, but it can be done in a community setting.
So that's such a great service to the community, isn't it? I mean, I literally didn't know until today. That you could do it. What else can pharmacists do that the audience might not know about?
I mean, honestly, Lawrence, people think we just grab medicine from the shelf and we give it, but we're obviously the expert when it comes to medicine. So anything to do with medications, interactions, we are the pro. So you need to ask us. And unfortunately, with GPs, they're not really like an expert in medicines. No offence to any doctors out there, but I'm saying in terms of...
GPs aren't experts in medicine. Change my mind.
Because honestly, Lawrence, there's so many mistakes that GPs make on a prescription when it comes to the medication, the dose, the strength, and it's like we have to correct them. But unfortunately, doctors do get pissed off when we correct them. They're like, oh, but we're GPs.
You're not allowed
How
to say
can a
that,
pharmacist...
You're not allowed to say the peed off word on TV.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
Come
sorry.
I never do that. OK, look, I want to know about The Apprentice.
Right, with The Apprentice...
But why... So just talk us through from the beginning. When did you decide, right, I'm out of the pharmacy for a bit, you prescribed the antibiotics...
So, I mean, with The Apprentice, I was like, you know what, I do come from a business family, so it's like, you know, my mum and dad, they're both entrepreneurs, and I was like, The Apprentice is a great show for me to actually see what the show is about and see if I can potentially win the 250k investment with Lord Sugar himself.
And did you enjoy your time on it?
You know what, Lawrence, if I'm being transparent, it was a really tough process, and you know, it is a TV show at the end of the day, and you know, it was disappointing, but you know, it did open a lot of doors for me, and I was really grateful for that.
And you learnt some valuable lessons. What was Lord Sugar like? Was he intimidating?
Lord Sugar was definitely intimidating in the sense where whenever you're in that boardroom and you're like sat in front of Lord Sugar, you're like, oh my gosh, like your heart just pounds. It's really scary. I don't know, like. Can you do that, Lawrence? Can you imagine? Would you do it like The Apprentice?
No, God, no. I'd be terrible. I'd be really bad at it, because I'd go, I've got a totally different way of doing this and no one else would agree, and I'd be fired on day one. So your passions are pharmacy?
Yes.
Now, drawing already. What about celebrity dating?
Yes, exactly. So
how did that go?
A few months, yes, after I got booked to do Celebs Go Dating, and obviously, unfortunately...
Were you dating...
Well, I was actually dating a variety of both male and female, really.
So greedy.
Well, you know what? You have to experiment what you like. Do you know what I mean, Lawrence? And with me, I've not been in a relationship before. I was really confused in the sense of what is it that I like and who am I? I was always confused because I never came to terms with my sexuality, to be honest with you. I was a bit all over the place.
What do you mean? So is that from a childhood thing, or is that what
it was? Yeah, I think it's more of a childhood thing, and it's something where I've always been career driven, and I never actually thought about relationship or being with someone. So it was never a priority to me. So I thought by doing Celebs Go Dating, it would be the perfect opportunity for me to experience what I like and just see where it takes me. But unfortunately, came out single.
No!
You know...
How can you be single?
Can you imagine? Look, I don't know.
Maybe you should decide one way or the other. Maybe you should go, you know what, I'm going to go girls or boys. And maybe that would help.
But the thing is as well, it's also because I'm still a virgin as well, you know? So it's like, I still don't know...
This is
what I like, really. I don't know what to say. Well, with the lovely 2 agents I had in the process who were helping me with Anna and Paul. There were 2 agents on the show. They were amazing, but they were very patient with me.
So do you not think maybe it's hard to attract a date or a mate if you're not quite sure whether you even know which sex you want to be with?
That's the thing. I mean, I was like, you know, with me, I want to go more for the personality and really more about that person. And I just think it's more about the vibe and the energy, really. Do you see what I mean, Lauren?
But you can get guys with quite feminine energy and get girls with quite masculine energy.
I know, but
ultimately it does kind of boil down to which one you're into.
That's the thing. I mean, if it's a guy, I would definitely prefer a masculine vibe, not a feminine. But
so you're talking like...
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Masculine.
I have a feeling I might know which way this will end up.
Do you know what I mean, Lawrence? But, like, I mean, with female... I mean, it's more about the personality. I mean, I keep saying Nicki Minaj as an example, but like, you know, that kind of character, someone who's strong, like, who doesn't love a strong, empowering woman? Like, it's incredible. I think it's inspiring. I mean, do you know what I mean? And it's International Women's Day as well.
I know, it's International Women's Day. Definitely don't come out on International Women's Day. Do
you know what I mean?
What's next for you? What are you up to next?
You know what? The next for me is, Lawrence, is to really just continuously using my platform to just put out pharmacy, and really educating people, but doing like quirky videos that are educational and fun. And I'm hoping with the platforms that I've done already, this can help and, teach people and open paths, really. I just feel like there's a lot with pharmacies and I want to be that voice.
I love it, and thank you for telling me that I can now go to my own pharmacy and get.
Well, you can come to me, Lawrence. Come to me.
Babe, you never know what would happen.
Oh, no. I'll look after you.
I know you would. Thank you, Navid Sole, for joining me on Talking Pints. Right, coming up next is the lovely Jacob Rees-Mogg. First, though, the weather.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGiffin here from the Met Office. There'll be further snow in places during the next 24 hours, but the emphasis for snow shifts a bit further north as milder air returns to the far south associated with these weather fronts, and the cold air hangs on across the rest of the UK as the weather fronts bring rain to the far south. The northern edge of them will result in snow. Mainly on Wednesday evening, it's parts of Wales, especially over higher parts, as well as the Midlands, where we're likely to see those spells of snow bring perhaps some disruption, 5, possibly 10 centimetres in places. That peters out by the end of the night and it stays dry with clear spells for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, with temperatures well below freezing in places. A few snow flurries for the north of Scotland, otherwise mostly fine as we go into Thursday. Showers of rain in the far south of England and South Wales, with temperatures here above freezing as we begin the day. Gusty wind, though, continuing. In between, for Northern Ireland, North Wales, the North Midlands and Northern England, here we're going to see an increasingly wintry scene during Thursday. Rain at the very lowest levels and around coasts, but above 100 metres.